and see what happens. Craig, you're back.
Perfect.
Okay.
I am sorry. Of course, the most important thing is to go and get samples out the workshop.
Oh, superb. Well done. Well done. Well done. Okay, folks, just to kick off then, let me introduce you firstly to Sven. Sven, you might want to pull into the camera. For those of you that haven't met Sven, he's my business partner based in Joburg. He's down here for some meetings that we're involved in. And it's nice for you guys to get a picture of him and know who you're talking to. If anything is happening up in Joburg where you need to speak to anyone, he's the guy running the show there. Then, of course, next is Craig. Craig is our partner and the manufacturer of the 10.20 system. And he is the gentleman who is going to talk us through the product today with a view to all of us being enlightened with regards to what it can do and how it does it. So, Craig, on that note, if you'd like to introduce yourself and take it away, please do.
Yeah, guys, should I just crack on and just get onto it?
Crack on. Okay. I'm recording it.
Just a minute.
So for...
Just a minute. Jonathan, I think David is like in the waiting room. I think you got to let him in.
No.
I think so. It looks
I've let him in. He's got his video off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I've learned, Vincent, from last time. I'm now watching who's here and who's not here, so that I let everyone in who wants to be here. Cool.
Sorry, Craig.
Go for it. Thank you. No problem, guys. I'm just going to set up screen quickly. And let's just make sure we get it. Are you guys in on that one? Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So the goal here is not to kill everyone with sort of death by PowerPoint, but really to try and work out why we do this. So as Jonty mentioned, some of the challenges we have in the flooring space are wet trades and access, particularly with sort of subflooring type stuff, time to lay and cure and dry stuff, and excess moisture if one's trying to get a finish down in a hurry. And when we're using a screed, what I've got there is that we call it a sort of a waste system for wet access, self-leveler time, and excess moisture. Screeds are here to stay. They are great solutions in many cases. We're not suggesting that 10.20 is in any way a one-stop shop in the flooring space, but it certainly does have a space if you're in a hurry. When you're refurbishing on site, much the same. If a shop fitting space, you've got to break out stuff. You end up with a rough surface. Your access is always a challenge in shop fitting space, particularly where you're trying to get the ceiling in at the same time as you're trying to get a floor finish down. And the other trades that you're working around are literally being killed every time we in the flooring space go down onto that flooring space. And all of that adds a whole chunk of time. The other thing with breaking out and doing all that stuff is there's rubble and there's weight and there's height gains and all sorts of stuff on big buildings. And if you can avoid a screed on a 6, 7, 10-story building, there's a whole chunk of weight you lose, number one. And you can actually reduce the height of the building, which is quite a big thing for the architects and the engineers on the process. Most of this, I'm sure you guys are very familiar with, so I don't really want to harp on it because we're all in the trade and that's what we do. So why 10.20? It literally arrives in a box. We manufacture down here in Cape Town and distribute from here. You get a box of tricks, which are boards, top and bottom board. There's an adhesive layer on the top, adhesive layer on the bottom. You take off the covering and you literally stick them together in a very simple pattern without any of the joints telegraphing, so you don't get anything flowing through onto the LVTs or whatever finish you've got. Guys, can you hear me okay?
Can hear you.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Please interrupt at any point if you need to, it's no problem. The other thing that the 10.20 system will offer you, which are added benefits, is the acoustic side is superb, particularly in a sort of a second floor environment. If you've got offices, if you've got an apartment block, the noise transfer from top to bottom is reduced by the acoustic foam that we build into the system at the bottom. And if you've seen the system, that's the purple foam that we have. You can put it down on top of an existing floor if it's in reasonable nick without actually doing anything to that floor. and leaving it in play. And much later in time, if you'd like to lift that, the 10.20 and the finish you've chosen, you're left with the original floor. Being in a box, there's no drying time, very little mess, and the quality of the finish before you get a floor finish down, the actual smoothness of it is superb. Technically, yes.
No, you're going to have it on the next board. It's fine. It's coming up.
Okay. All right. So technically, we've done some research on the sort of decibel benefits of the system. And it's quite a difficult one to get done in a lab situation. So we did it old school with a 4-pound hammer on a concrete floor above. And we then hit the concrete floor with a 4-pound hammer. We measured below. We then put a 10 millimeter system on top, hit it again, then put the 20 mil system on top and hit it again with that same hammer. And we ended up with sort of 23, 24 decibels on the single system and up to 30 on the 20 mil system, which doesn't sound much, but when you're sitting underneath and you listen, which is why we did the test, it's literally from huge noise to almost zero on that kind of knocking noise that you get through a floor slab.
Craig, obviously that excludes whatever floor finish has got to go on top of it, which will add a further dB rating to that.
Yes, absolutely. So
okay,
this is just
right.
our system. This is just our system in itself.
Right.
So if you're putting a carpet on, obviously that's slightly different. If you're putting an underfelt or a carpet tile,
the LVT of 6 dB. Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll add a little bit on top of that again.
Okay.
So absolutely, that's just our system is offering that, what you're showing at the moment. The boards themselves are HDF, high density fiber, for a reason. It's just the hardness and the sort of stability of the board. The foam underneath is a closed cell acoustic foam, so it's impermeable to moisture penetration or through top to bottom. But of course, there are joints below, so we do recommend there's a PVC that goes underneath that. If there's fear of moisture or it's going down onto a screen that still has moisture, etc., etc. Similar process to the logic on a laminate type flooring system, where you want to get a vapor barrier down below. Okay. Size of board is 1200 by 600. And the joy of it is that you create, with a floating system, as you guys all know, you're creating both a thermal break, which is quite important in today's sort of SANS 10400 XA and that nonsense, the 204s, and an acoustic break. And I'm not sure if you guys want me to spend a little bit of time on that acoustic break and how it works, particularly on a flooring system that's floating.
Go for it, Craig. Won't do any harm.
Yeah. It's John, I mean, you've heard me say this many times. It's that good old railway cowboy in a railway line story. You know, the guy puts his head down on the railway track and he's 10 Ks away and he can hear the train coming, because sound travels exceptionally well through solids. You just got to think of water, how it travels through water, how it travels through steel if you hit the one end of the hammer. Concrete building, you can be 10 floors up and the guy's chiseling away at the concrete base and the whole building can hear that noise. Sound travels superbly well through solids. It also travels very well through air, but with a solid, if you then take that railway line and you cut it anywhere along its length, and that cowboy is now not going to hear a thing. That one little millimeter of cut between the railway line, on the solid of that railway line, is what kills that sound. And that's how we see an acoustic break, is that the path of its journey is stopped almost dead in its tracks, if that makes sense. Now, when we put that into a horizontal situation like we have with the floor, and we have an acoustic foam down on a concrete floor, and then you put a solid floor on top of it again, albeit a sort of timber type or cellulose type layup as we have, if I bang the top of that floor, the sound is unable to transfer from the solid through the foam back into the solid, which is the slab, for example, below. And that's that same acoustic break principle. And what you end up with is what's called a floating solid. And that's where the word floating floors sort of come from. You end up with this floating solid surface that when I hit it with a hammer, if I walk on it, the energy of that sound is actually dissipated horizontally into the solid because it can't go through the foam. And that's where it goes. So the guy sitting underneath in his apartment block below is going to hear very little of that sound coming through because of that acoustic break. And then technically, of course, if we then put that solid horizontally tight up against the wall, we've now lost that break again. Then it's no longer a floating system. And that's how they work. That's the simplicity of an acoustic system on a horizontal surface like a floor. Makes sense?
Yeah. Craig, just one question from my side on a vertical
Yes.
application.
Yes.
Has that been done? Because I mean, you always get those type of questions thrown at you from a specifier.
In a vertical application, as in on a wall application.
Yeah.
Look, on the 10.20 system,
Hmm.
to be honest with you, we've never done it.
Okay.
And the reason, just as I think through it while I stumble a bit as I think, the challenge we have is that you're putting it up in small panels, the 1200s by 600s. So you've got to build the sort of bottom layer, then the top layer as you go, almost like laying bricks.
And you obviously have to use some sort of an adhesive, and then it's no longer, it loses a lot of the acoustic benefit.
Yes. So in the acoustic space where the guys do take a classic dry wall system with a gypsum board or a plaster board, that the acoustic break that one would apply to that is an acoustic tape that you put onto the stud and track system.
Okay.
And then you fix your vertical board onto that. And even underneath at the bottom of that board, you would suspend it slightly off the floor on a foam or something like that, so that the whole board is separated from that stud and track system, much the same way.
Okay. So would the thought process of application be the same, or would it be something which you guys would still need to investigate?
Look, if the question's on a 10.20 as a walling system, I don't think it's applicable. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's fine. Just because those type of questions always get thrown at least I can turn around and say, look, no, not suitable for that application.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be, because most of those sort of dry walling situations are framed. If it's a dry walling situation, and then as I said, the acoustic break will go onto the frame before you fit a solid board.
Okay.
And the tracks at the bottom would also sit on a foam, so they're not fixed to the floor below. And the wall, the vertical tracks, the U-channels up against the wall, they would also have an acoustic break behind them. So that whole wall, in theory, would float.
Okay. No, I got it.
A brick wall application is, of course, a very different situation, because now that's solid to solid. And that's where the challenge comes in.
Is there not an added angle on this in terms of the fact that the 10.20 system is probably more of an impact sound reduction versus an airborne sound? And on a wall, generally you're not going to have impact as on the floor. It's going to be airborne sound you're trying to reduce, and 10.20 wouldn't be as effective in that as it is with impact sound. Yeah,
Spencer, the basics, good question. The basics on the acoustic side is that you get sound insulation and you get sound absorption. The solid sound, I always call about a solid sound stuff going through, is the banging when you hit a wall, when you jump on a floor, when you drop something, etc. That's a mechanical sound that's being made in the solid and transferred. Now the acoustic break in the floating solid is what will dissipate that. The sound you speak of is sound insulation between room A and room B, for example. And in that space, density is king. So the denser the substance between, the better that resistance. And that's concrete, steel, glass, all those things. Just from an audible sound coming at that, it reflects back much better when it's solid. And then the challenge is within that same room, when all that sound's reflecting back at you, now you need to soften up that stuff and absorb some of it with various systems and ceiling tiles and furniture and what else you've got to try and break up that reflection within that compartment. So if you do a partition wall in a lightweight structure out of a dry wall, then you need a bit of everything. So you get the density out of a gypsum, for example, or a NewTek type sheet, etc. So the density to reflect the sound. You stop that noise transferring by putting an acoustic break in it. And then into that wall as well, you would then put a batten of sorts, sort of densities up to 30, sometimes 80 kilos per cube, to absorb anything that gets through and stop it going through to the next wall, which is the room next door. And that's where you're getting a sort of sandwich type construction.
Okay.
Brick walls are best for
Craig,
audible stuff.
I'm going to interrupt.
Moving on. Yes.
We're running out of time, and I'd like to try and keep it within the 30 minutes.
Good. No, Jonty, perfect, because you're going to take me down that rabbit hole. And as you know me, I struggle to come out of it. So let's keep moving. So let's take a simple floor. And you might recognize the face on the right-hand side and the shoe on the left, which is Sven's foot, if I remember. And this is a project that up in sort of Kruger Park. This is the floor. That's the sort of rough condition of it. And then literally we take our system. There's a bottom board that goes down underneath, and a top board that goes on top, which actually stick together. And I'll show you how that works in a sec. And you start ending up with a clean environment. No real prep in this example needed, apart from possibly obvious bumps that are sticking up in the floor that might need addressing. But you'll see there's a bottom board and there's a top board. So that's the bottom board facing us now. The darker side is because there's an adhesive on it. And you can see the plastic being pulled back to expose the adhesive. And then there's the top board, which has that same matching adhesive, which you then literally put on top of it in a well-structured way to obviously keep the joints to a minimum. And you'll see they're butting hard up against each other. And you'll notice that the joints are not lining up. So they're always staggered by a pattern to make sure that there's no telegraphing of a joint through the system. And I'll explain to you how that works. This is pretty much how it works. If the bottom layer, which is underneath, is offset by half to the top layer, if that makes sense. And you'll see that all the joints in the bottom layer then line up outside of the line of the joints on top. Like an offset Tetris pattern by half.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Correct.
And once it's not like every single board has to be placed specifically. Once you start the pattern on the bottom, you go with full boards all the way. You start the pattern on the top with that line of boards, and they're very easy to splice, to split and splice. It's just literally a Stanley knife, and you snap it with a straight edge, and you snap the board. And then once you've got the pattern going, you see these are the purple here is all full boards across the full length of the room. So this is now Sven. You'll recognize that on this particular project, and this is how the boards go down. That's it. Jobbed. End of story. On the right-hand side, there's a picture here, a recent project done at Standard Bank, if I may mention the name Sven. I'm hoping I haven't stood on any toes when I say that. This was an interesting project that the 10.20 system was put down on top of an existing raised flooring system. And that ended up
600 by 600.
Yeah, an access flooring. Yeah. And there's that access flooring system here with the 10.20 going down on top and resulting in that finish. Sven, maybe you want to butt in quickly on that one.
Yeah, so we had Standard Bank they've got offices. This is a big building in Rosebank, and most of it is under carpet tile directly on the access flooring. And when you walk on it, you can feel the give and the unevenness between each different access flooring tiles, so to say, plus the noise. They wanted to have a little wet area or a little meeting area where people could come and stand. They're going to put tables, have a coffee station, so that some of the employees can come and stand around, have a bite, have a cup of coffee, have a chat. So they've started with a small area of 25 square meters, roughly, which is what you're seeing here. And normally what they do in places like this, they take 6mm marine ply, glue it down onto the access floor, and then screw down on top of that. So if they ever need to remove it and get underneath it, it's a hell of a job. In this case, the 10.20 system went down. It's free floating. They managed very quickly and easily to cut the access holes where they do need to get access to the electrics underneath the flooring, the access floor. And then they used a bit of glue that they applied to the trowel, as you see here. You're pointing at it on the white to put the vinyl down. And that whole job, including training or upskilling a guy from scratch on 10.20, Perrius, who's there in the red on the left, basically, it was a long time getting into the building. Work started at about 10:30, and he was finished and out the building by 3 o'clock.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the in the box bit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So
the thing about the boxes, which I was going to mention earlier, those boxes at the size that they are and the weight they are makes it very easy to get it into a goods lift, put it on a trolley, to maneuver it around spaces. You're not dealing with ply boards at 2.5 by 1.2, which can be an absolute mission.
yeah, so the boxes, just quickly on that, Senna, are about 18, 19 kilos each, and 1200 by 600. And there's 5 top boards and 5 bottom boards in a box. And that equates to 3.6 square meters of finished product.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to put the gumph in. So really, in summary, and this is the last slide that I have, and hopefully then some questions, is why do we do it? Why would people consider using non-traditional screed systems when the screed industry has gone ballistic the last 8 or 9 years in particular, but in particular the self-leveling technology of being able to put self-leveling screeds on top of all sorts of different floor finishes? Why would one want to compete in that space with a system that's different to that? The simple answer to this is really the speed at which it works. It's completely dry. You don't have to stop everything around you and every trade that's working around you to get your flooring system down. You end up with a very flat surface. And if any of the joints for some reason are slightly off, it's literally a rubbing block and 2 rubs and you're back down to normal, bearing in mind the adhesive that's going on top is normally about 1 mil to 1.5 mil by the time it's down. Very simple, very easy. Once, as Sven said, once someone's worked out how to do it once, they're in forever. It's cost effective to get down. And the big thing for us that's different are the last 3, that it's instant. It's literally a floor in a box. You need a Stanley knife and a straight edge and off you go. You start installing. And it's local. So we're able to, to make as people need and not stock container loads from some country elsewhere.
Can you go back?
That's my spiel.
Right? Can you go back 1 slide, please?
Yes.
What we didn't speak about here is what you're seeing is that same wooden floor that the 10.20 system went down on, which is the slide on the left. Then on top of that 10.20, we used 2.5 mil Installay, which we free floated on the surface. And on top of that, we used an 8 mil laminate click system from Quickstep, which went on top of that. So we've got 10 mil plus 2.5 mil plus 8 mil. So we've got a 20 mil complete floor to top, almost with a double insulation and an easy installation, except for cutting around those funny corners. But for the rest of it, you've got the 10.20, 2.5 mil Installay, and then laminate on top of that.
Yeah.
Craig?
So how come you use the Installay underneath as well? You need to give it like an extra height there, because you can see by the door it's quite higher than the
Vincent,
passages.
I'll help you on this one. Is my co-worker, who was Sven, okay,
Yeah.
very inexperienced.
Lost you, Jonty.
The story there is that we were actually just doing some experimentation, and the issue is I just had my signal flash up that we're running out of time. So Craig, quickly,
Yes.
show us the samples.
No,
Yes.
Vincent, the other story is what you didn't see was that on this side, a carpet came on the floor on this side.
Okay, so
it actually almost came out exactly level.
okay, perfect.
Carpet went to
Okay.
10.20, so it's almost level.
Okay, I'm happy with that. It's fine, no problem.
Cool. Craig?
I think if I can hold this guy up, goodness, it looks like it's all bent. I think that's the camera, but it's not bent. So guys, the acoustic foams on the bottom, we have a couple of options. The one that we generally use is just a single purple by itself. That's the most cost-effective system that we have, and that would look in sort of a section like that, if that makes sense. if we're going to double it up, and we talk about the 20 system, this is what we're going to end up with. Let me get this right. So you're ending up with an acoustic layer. You're ending up with a 6 mil board combination in between, another acoustic layer, and then there's another board on top. So this would be a classic sprung floor, dance floor, very strong acoustic type system. Our experience in this space is there are not many that are needed. I don't know if you guys are in that space much, but it's available if it's needed. But bearing in mind that it's exactly the same thing times 2. So the 10 mil system's at the bottom, and the extra 10 makes the 20. But in principle, you do exactly the same thing. You just keep going. There's no special training between one or the other. You just do it twice as opposed to once, if that makes sense. You know, if you take if we're also going out of interest, we are now into the space and almost close with finishing it, a solid type board where we're using a cementitious and sort of waterproof type board as opposed to a cellulose structure. And those boards are, we're getting close to getting that done now. These are absolutely solid, and that would take on ceramic tiles, wet washing areas, etc., that you're very concerned about water. We'd be able to pop this into that space. So stand by on that one. We have not launched that yet, but it's coming.
Fantastic. Okay, Craig, let me first of all thank you for the lack of presentation. Appreciate you being here. Guys, just to sum up, Craig is an engineer specialized in the acoustic field. I'll get his details to you. I know that should you have any really technical questions, he is the man very capable of answering them. You can try me first. If I can't do it, I'll bounce them off him. And on that note, I have got the samples. Thank you, Craig and Brian, for making them. If you wouldn't mind popping me your close nets, or however you would like the samples delivered to you, I'll get them off to you. And Vincent, I'll catch up with you next week so we can meet and see how things are going. And I've got a whole set of samples for you as well. And then last but not least is I have got another presentation on the cradle system, much along these lines, around about 6 to 7 minutes, which I will schedule for about 2 weeks from now. If you've got any questions, please pop them on the WhatsApp group to me or mail them to me, and I'll get back to you. Have a lekker day. Thanks for being here, and I'll keep the recording. Go for it.
If I may I chat to you, Sven, for 2 seconds after this?
Yes, certainly. Yeah.
Super.
Cool.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Any other questions now?
Thanks, Craig.
Any questions, guys?
Nope.
Have you seen anything like this before? I have one question. Have you guys seen something like this before?
Not really, no, but I've played around with a sample, and I must say it cuts beautifully, you know, very innovative. I've spoken to a few clients of mine already as well, and they're quite, through the, say over the moon really with the product itself. And so there's a lot of potential. Just needs the proper exposure now and so forth as well going forward.
Yeah, please. And our job is to help convince you guys that it really has a place. So fire anything at me, positive, negative, whatever you need to know, just fire it at us and we'll try and help. Perfect. Okay.
Cool.
Super.
Fantastic. Ken, thanks for being here. I'll catch up with you in the course of the week. But lekker. There were another 2 folks who were another 3. Michelle from Mauritius was supposed to be as well, but I'll get the recordings to everyone.
Perfect.
Can I ask a quick question while Craig's online?
Yes, Ken.
We are getting an application down here where you're on the 2nd floor of a timber building, and where the floor is not necessarily rigid enough to put a click system vinyl or a click system laminate straight onto that. So generally, as you said earlier in the presentation, people put down shutter ply. Would this system give the 2nd floor enough rigidity that you could put those click systems down without risking damage to the click system itself?
Yes, because you end up with a monolithic, once you've bonded the 2 boards together, you end up with a monolithic solid that doesn't have a joint. So the whole thing is floating. So there is no click because there's a mechanical bond or there's an adhesive bond between top and bottom. So once that's done, that whole surface is monolithic. So absolutely.
Okay, well, that's fantastic because it does have the advantage of being able to accommodate the boards on top, but it also has the extra advantage of acoustic, which you wouldn't get obviously by putting shutter ply down.
Correct. So, and that's it. And there's no damage to the floor below. So if you remember the picture that we showed on with Sven's foot pushing that one particular floor panel, the system just flew straight over the top of that. There was no local repair work needed. Obviously, if it's really bad, one should put a local repair bit in. But a little bit of sub-movement between the stuff below is not a problem because it's going to span across that because it's a monolithic, it's bonded monolithically.
Yeah, no, certainly got applications for that. Okay, magic.
Super. Okie dokes. Anything else?
Right. Yeah.
Well,
Could we also try? Could we also try and maybe get the product into with maybe other vinyl manufacturers that they can test it maybe with their products as well and kind of give us the thumbs up to kind of use the product with their product as well?
It's happening as we speak. Vincent, in Johannesburg, there's an example of this going down in a boardroom in a wood distributor. So we will be getting feedback on that.
That's fantastic. That's good news.
It's a good point, Vincent, because the vinyl guys need to accept.
Yes.
And recommend, quite frankly, because quite often those guys are pulled in ahead of people that really know what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And they have to give advice on a solution. And if we can put a very obvious solution in front of them up front, that'll help.
Correct. Especially where the guarantees and the warranties is concerned as well, with their guarantees. So they can guarantee it, then we're sailing.
Yep, and as Sven says, they're busy with that at the moment, getting the bind from vinyl manufacturers and suppliers. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okie dokes.
Right, guys. Right. Craig, we'll phone you on WhatsApp.
Well, we just stay on this one. The other guys will log off quietly, and we'll stay on this one. Or is it almost on?
We've got a minute left on this one.
Okay. Are you going to phone me on Skype or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Let's do Skype. Cool.
Cheers, guys.
Gentlemen,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Right.
Cheers.
Jerry.
Bye.
Have a good day. Ciao. Bye. Bye.